Joining me now is the Greens Senator and Defence Spokesman, David Shoebridge. David Shoebridge, thanks for your time.
Yeah, no worries, Andrew. I'm in a bit of strife on Mother's Day, but probably so are you.
Yes, so, yeah. Well, we'll have to make up for it. Now, Anthony Albanese's always been an enemy of the Greens. He got you good this time, didn't he, taking out your leader?
Oh, look, I mean, obviously we are gutted about losing Adam. I've said that before and I said it again, and I'll say the same about Max and Stephen. This was a tough election environment for us. And, we saw this surge of coalition votes adding to that Labor primary. Really a gift from Peter Dutton to Anthony Albanese. And when your political opponents, and Peter Dutton was very clearly our political opponent, is giving Labor such a gift, it did make it hard for us in Melbourne.
How much damage is self-inflicted, though? You started out as an environmental-based party under Bob Brown. You've now moved on to housing issues, and clearly that didn't work for a guy like Max Chandler-Mather. And you've moved on to issues like Palestine. Now, that's not what the Greens were set up to do, take sides in a foreign war, were they?
Well, the Greens have always been set up with 4 pillars, and that involves peace and non-violence. And core to that is doing things like everything we can to stop a genocide. Social justice. And at the core of social justice in this country at the moment is the unresolved housing crisis and millions of young Australians thinking they're never going to get a look in. Environmental sustainability and basic belief in grassroots democracy. It's always been baked into the core of the Greens, and we've held true to that. I think what we've actually seen is a broadening of our base. I mean, our base is actually more resilient now than it would have been 10 or 15 years ago.
The results don't show that. And I mean, I'll put it to you that you making Palestine one of the big issues was something that turned Australians off.
Well, I'd say back to you, Andrew. If one of your core values is peace and non-violence and you see a genocide going on, you do everything you possibly can to stop a genocide. And I think the way you build a political movement, and not a flash in the pan, not something that comes and goes like Australian Democrats or other third parties have been, the way you build a political movement is you stick to your core principles. And what we saw was, yes, we lost those 3 seats, and no one's going to pretend otherwise. We now have the sole balance of power in the Senate. Our core vote held, and indeed it strengthened into electorates and places we haven't seen before.
So you should just keep going the way you're going, should you? I mean, Mehreen Faruqi wore a keffiyeh in the Senate. Do you want to see that sort of thing continue? I mean, she's a leadership candidate.
Well, Senator Faruqi has been a brave and courageous campaigner, and I understand your base. And this show doesn't like Senator Faruqi. That's your entitlement.
Well, I don't have a base. I'm a journalist.
I don't have a base.
I'm not a politician like you.
Sky News, you talk to your base. And I'm not saying that about you personally.
I'm not talking to my base. I'm just reporting.
Well, you're talking to the Sky News base.
I don't have a base.
Sky News has a base. You can pretend otherwise. We could pretend that Sky News doesn't have a base. So I don't think that would be useful. And I'm not talking about you personally. I'm talking about your platform. But what I would say is this. If you want to build a genuine third force in this country, there's no point just becoming the Labor Party and selling out your principles. Do you think
senators should be wearing keffiyehs in the Senate?
I think senators should be entitled to wear things that express their political values in their workplace. And I think the idea that you are going to code or dress police your political opponents, well, I mean, people want to do that, that's fine. But I don't think...
Listen to this.
I tell you what I don't think. I think when people went to vote at this election, one of the key things they were voting on was not what someone was wearing in the Senate. What they were voting on was a rejection of Peter Dutton and far-right politics, a rejection of Trumpian-style politics, and that saw a collapse in the coalition vote, and that saw a surge towards the Labor Party. It empowered them and made it very hard in 3-cornered contests for us against the Labor Party.
It feels like you're in a bit of denial, David Shoebridge. I mean, you're right about the Trumpian link to Dutton, but you seriously believe that the way that you have gone on the Palestine issue hasn't taken some polish off you, hasn't taken some vote off
What I would say is, if you don't stick to your core principles, and in this case, opposing a genocide with as much vigour as you can, if you don't stick to those core principles, you don't survive as a third party in Australian politics. What I would say is this, though. After every election, you have a review. Win, lose or draw, you have a review. And our party will go through a review and they will look at how this election played out. They'll look at our role in the election. They'll look at our messaging. And of course, you have a review. But I think what we saw was an expansion of our voter base. And you want to attack Max. I actually think speaking to those millions of Australian renters, speaking to those young people, is an incredible new audience for the Greens who are listening in a way they haven't
So how
before.
come he lost?
Well, he lost because it turns out that when you take on the property industry and you take on the war industry and you take on the fossil fuel industry and you take on the billionaires and you take them on all at once, it's a bloody hard job. And they all came after Max. They all came after Max.
Let me ask you...
maybe that explains why Labor Party doesn't do what we did. You don't take on the billionaires, you don't take on the fossil fuel industry, because it turns out, and this won't surprise you, it's pretty bloody hard.
All right, well, let me ask you about this, though. I mean, I saw one debate in the Senate in the last term where the Greens refused to vote for a motion supported by both major parties seeking to condemn the defacing of war memorials with pro-Palestinian slogans, graffiti. Why wouldn't you oppose that? Do you think it's okay for war memorials to be defaced?
I genuinely don't think that was what was in the mind of millions of Australian voters. And you want to make the election about that, that's fine, but I think you're going to miss the point. This election was about millions of Australians rejecting far-right Trumpian politics, the kind of politics that this platform regularly platforms. I'm not making it personal about you, Andrew, but this platform regularly platforms it. And if there's denial in this place, well, it's a Sky News Corp denial because, you got smashed. You got totally smashed. Now, we had a tough election, but our core vote held. We have the balance of power in the Senate.
Your leader wouldn't stand in front of the Australian flag. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, I mean, I've seen plenty of photos of Adam in front of the Australian flag. And I think
there
the
were
idea
press
that
conferences where
there was like one
stand
occasion
in front of the Australian.
And again, do you reckon that's what millions of Australians voted for? That might be what the sort of red at tooth and claw Sky News base gets excited about, but it turns out that doesn't excite.
Look, I do feel this is a slight deflecting tactic by you in terms of accountability.
I know
you lost
tough.
House of Representatives seats.
I've said that. We were gutted by the loss of those 3 seats.
Well, there's got to be a reason for it, particularly if your big stance was against Peter Dutton and the politics you speak of. So
our core
I say the reason of it is you're getting off the reason that people traditionally voted for the Greens, which is one, environmental issues, B, kind of keeping the bastards honest, Democrat style.
Well,
Instead, you're on about Palestine.
Well, I can tell you now, core elements we took to the election and wanted to talk about was keeping coal and gas in the ground, dealing with a climate crisis, dealing with it as not a political issue, but an issue of basic physics. Now, the fact that it's hard to get that across, and it was, because there weren't many people willing to report on our clear position to end native forest logging, deal with the climate disaster, not approve any new climate-busting coal and gas projects. That was hard to get across because there wasn't a lot of appetite in the media to discuss it. And one of the reasons was we had this crazy right-wing Trumpian discussion which soaked up what would otherwise have been the space to have some of those hard policy decisions.
Who are you backing as leader? Because you've got Mehreen Faruqi there. I would say, given her stance, one of the more extreme kind of candidates for the Greens. Sarah Hanson-Young or Larissa Waters. Who do you like?
Well, we haven't seen final nominations, and this will surprise you, Andrew. I'm not going to give you a running commentary on who I would be supporting as leader or who's nominated as leader. But I mean, some people are asking, how is it decided? And that's a fair question. It's decided by the elected representatives we have in the party room. It'll be 12 people making that decision. My hope is that I see this happening, we will come together as collegiately as we can and, first of all, try and make a consensus decision. And if we can't, well, those 12 members, of which I'm one, will, I hope, make a decision which will see, big shoes to fill with Adam. And and I said to you before, that's a real loss losing Adam, and it's big shoes to fill. So whoever is chosen to do that is going to have a job to bring the party together and put forward a positive platform for the next 3 years.
Might you run as deputy leader?
Oh, look, I don't have any intention to run for a leadership position.
So not just leader and deputy, you're not running?
Well, I've said I won't run for leader, and I've made that very clear. And I've said I won't run for leader. I do think, I think, the bulk of our party room are women, and I think it's time, it would be good to see a woman lead the Greens. I've been pretty clear about that. And I look forward to whoever we choose really bringing us together, and we're pretty united, and then making a clear platform in the next 3 years and using the sole balance of power in the Senate. And that is going to be interesting, actually, and that would be a good thing to talk about, how we exercise that power over the next 3 years.
Well, if since you mention it, what will your position be, do you think, on this controversial sort of unrealised gains tax increase on super? Is that something you're open to supporting?
Well, we've never thought it's a great idea for people with multi-million dollar superannuation balances to get a massive tax concession. Well, you know, somebody working at McDonald's is paying.
So you'd like the
high
tax to be
rates.
higher, or are you saying the government's proposal might be something you're open to passing through?
Well, we're always open to proposals that make our tax system fairer. I mean, that'll ultimately be a discussion of our party room.
Why'd you block it last time?
Well, we wanted to see a lower threshold, and we wanted to see, I think what we're seeing at the moment with superannuation is that it's costing more for the Treasury for the tax concessions on superannuation than it would be almost to give everyone a universal pension. And we need to have measures that mean those with the most don't also get the biggest tax cuts and the biggest benefits from the federal government.
Look, just finally, what did you make of the dumping of Ed Husic from Cabinet?
I thought it was pretty rough. I mean, Ed and I come from different political parties. I've found that he was one of the ministers you could actually talk to. I found him collaborative, always, going to bat for the Labor Party's interests and the government's interests. It was, but he was reasonably collaborative. I mean, if I'd said that last week, that might have been the reason why I got whacked by Prime Minister Albanese. But it's not for me to choose the cabinet. Labor Party, if they want to make mistakes like that, I can't do much about it.
Dave Shoebridge, thanks for your time.
Cheers, Andrew.